Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It is the episode I'm sure the majority of you have been waiting for, on the back of Newcastle United's League Cup win, the first piece of major silverware since 1969 and the first domestic trophy in 70 years. I am joined by John Gibson, who is smiling from ear to ear. You no doubt saw his team talk before the game, which went absolutely viral. I had to explain to John that that's actually a good thing. You guys absolutely loved it. And John has loved this weekend. We spoke on Wembley Way, John, as I was walking down. I give you a call, and you were just, it's hard to describe. You were just overcome with emotion.
It was so incredible. I've waited so long for it. Everything was said in that team talk, a bit of fun, bit of thing. But I was just repeating what every Geordie wanted and every Geordie was desperate for, because above all, we wanted the cup. We wanted that, but we wanted our pride. I've gone to 5 Wembley Cup finals since the 50s. And not only did we lose all 5, but I was pretty well humiliated in all 5. We played poorly. And here we were strutting about the Wembley stage. I mean, we played magnificently for an hour and a half for every minute, for 100 minutes. We were absolutely ecstatic. And they did everything I asked, which was just reflecting what every Geordie asked. We got it all, didn't we? They did everything like that. They were huge, big-hearted, wanted it. They blew Liverpool away. Up 2-1. We forecast 2-1, but I tell you what, 2-1 did them a service. It wasn't as close as that. I mean, 3-0 would have been better. Like the 74 one I watched the wrong way around. 3-0 would have been better. We were a different class to them. And by the way, didn't we fluke the trophy? In the semi-final, we beat Arsenal home and away. In the final, we beat Liverpool. Previously, we'd beaten Nottingham Forest and Chelsea. Currently, they're the top 4 in the Premier League, and we beat them all to win our first trophy in 70 years. Well, we fluked it, didn't we? We got a bit lucky in the end.
Is it sunk in yet?
Oh, honestly, I wake up. I said in this piece last week, because we got quite emotional, of course we did. Well, Geordie's on the cusp of something big, and perhaps it would be snatched away from us in the 11th hour, perhaps not. I said I'd cancelled dying, if you remember, because I wasn't going to miss Newcastle winning a trophy. Honestly, come Sunday night, I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I mean, it was absolutely unbelievable. By the way, I've done a deal with the big man. I'm not going yet. I've decided I'm not. This is just the first of many. I'm not going to miss anything that's about to happen. I've waited too long. I'm owed. I'm owed by the big man, and the deal's on. I mean, I remember in the 50s, which was our last domestic trophy. Can you believe that? Thank goodness we've got rid of that. 55 was the last one. We won 3 FA Cups in 5 years. I was a little schoolboy sitting on a high chair in my Auntie Grace's house, my legs dangling, not even touching the ground. And I watched Newcastle win the cup 3 times in 5 years. And I thought, this is some life. This is what we do. This is what Geordies do. They win the cups. They're a cup team. And then I got the job with the Chronicle and come back from Fleet Street in 66. And by 68, 2 years later, we were embarking on a escapade abroad on the continent that won us a European Face Cup. And I thought, I tell you what, we are going to win something every few years. This is the destiny of every Geordie. And we've won out since. But now we have. And you know what? Perhaps we will start winning something every few years now, just as I thought all those years ago that we were about to do. And I think we might now do that. It is just wonderful. And no, it hasn't sunk in. Every morning when I get up, I just check with myself that that was the match and that I hadn't just played it out in a dream in my mind, you know?
Me too. Every morning since the final, I've just woken up, started scrolling on social media, and you see the videos, whether it be the full-time whistle, whether it be the fans outside, whether it be the celebrations when they're lifting the cup. So many wonderful videos. Eddie Howe getting off the plane at the airport with it, and I'm fighting back the tears again just thinking about it. I want to go through, John, the moments in the game, and I want to talk about your emotions specifically. So I'm going to give you a few key points within the afternoon, and then I want you to tell me how you were feeling. So we'll start with before kickoff and the moment the scarves start going and the Blade and Races is sounding, and then all of a sudden you've got this big surfer flag rises over the Newcastle United end. Just sum up your feelings, because personally, from my point of view, soon as those scarves started going around, which looked brilliant, fair play to Salah for putting them on the seats. A, there was tears in my eyes, but B, I just felt that was the first key battle, fan versus fan, and we won. We just were louder than Liverpool. And I don't know about you. What were you feeling when you saw that?
Well, I always thought we'd win the Battle of the Terraces because I'm a great believer in Geordies, in the Geordie nation, in the Geordie hordes. I mean, I knew we'd win that one. If there was any apprehension, it was would we win the one on the field. And I know you had a little few tears after the game. I did. I couldn't believe a man of my age that's lived through all these years and thought he'd seen everything and done everything. I was fighting back the tears to stop looking a big softy then. And I thought, you know what? I don't care. I mean, I do not care. This is wonderful. I mean, there's been enough tears on Tyneside to fill the Tyne since the cup was won. And of course there has. How long have we waited? I've waited 70 years from when I was sitting in 55, a little lad watching and in that time, I haven't had a domestic trophy. I've had one European. Lots of people have never seen us win a trophy. And there's some little kids now, by the way, about 8 or 9, that have just watched Newcastle win, and they probably felt like I did in 55. Oh, this is going to happen often. This will be fun. This will be great. But I mean, early doors, the thing this time, and I'm not just saying it with hindsight, I genuinely believe it, Andrew, it felt different to 2 years ago. We felt 2 years ago, I felt that Newcastle United were like the little lad in the tuck shop. He's all these things are like all these sweeties are about. We're overawed, we're pop-eyed, we can't get enough of the occasion. It was all too much. And I had that feeling in 74, when Newcastle played and I was down in the Selson Park with the team. It was almost like this is all too much. There was an interview done in 74 between Shankly and Joe Harvey live just before the final. And we were sort of living on Fantasy Island in James Cagney, which was Bill Shankly, was sort of cynical and boom, and they just outdone us before a ball was kicked. I felt it was different this time. I believed it was different. And I mean, we'll get to them. I mean, Eddie Howe was just magnificent. He's just a master tactician. He outsmarted Arsenal in the semi-finals and he outsmarted Liverpool in the final. And that was the wonderful thing. Liverpool have lost one game in 29 in the Premier League to go 12 points clear. They were tucked up. We tucked them up, both on the field and the managers by the side of the field. I felt good at the kickoff. I, I, as half time was approaching, Andrew, I'm thinking, one top, one top. Come on, you've got to make this count because how often have we seen if you're on top and you don't get something, you fade. You take a deep breath. You think, is it our day? You think, whatever, and then it doesn't come, and it fades away. And then, dear, oh dear, oh dear, that header was absolutely wonderful, stunning, absolutely. I mean, we've had some headmasters nowadays with Alan Shearer and Wyn Davies and Supermac that were terrific in the air. I have never seen a better header than that, and from so far out. And I mean, the reason it was so good was that Trippier didn't hang the ball up with snow on it. Because if you're that far out, Andrew, if you're that far out and the ball's hung up with snow on it, you cannot generate enough pace to get it from 12 or 14 yards out into the back of the net. You cannot do it. You're too far out. You might if you're under the posts, but you're too far out. This was pinged in. And I mean, Byrne had pulled away, and so he was running onto it and the neck muscles. And by the way, McAllister, I mean, bless him, not the tallest fella in the Liverpool side, to mark Big Dan Burn at 6'7". McAllister was staring at his belly button when they were waiting for the ball to come across, and he didn't move, and Burn did, and the header was absolutely superb. But I tell you what, the only moment I had, I would never call it self-doubt, Andrew, but the only moment where I thought, oh dear, was at half time, because I had time to, think about things, and I had time to reach for a glass of white wine to steady the nerves, and I thought, this lot, they'll come back at us. They'll regroup at half time. The manager will be into them. They'll come back at us. Now, please, when they come back at us, that's fine. But let's go toe to toe with them. Let's not drop deeper and drop deeper and drop deeper and invite them on. Because at 1-0 with 45 minutes to go, you're not going to get away with it. Did we do that? Did we not at all do that? Which was brilliant. It is the most enjoyable 100 minutes, because there was 10 minutes of extra time. It is the most enjoyable 100 minutes I've had with Newcastle United for many, many, many years. And this was more important than any. I've had moments like that with the entertainers, but they won matches. They didn't win trophies. I had moments like that when I watched Newcastle beat Barcelona in the Champions League at St James's Park. Newcastle beat Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League at St James's Park. But they won matches. They didn't win trophies. This put our name in the record book. By the way, this is the first League Cup Newcastle United have ever won. Let us not forget that either. We've won 6 FA Cups, we've won the title, we've never won a League Cup. This is the first, and may it be the first of many.
Fingers crossed it is. Eddie Howe making history. You are right about the header. Superb header. So far out to get the direction onto it. And then you're right as well about the questions over what is going to be happening in the dressing room at half time. Because as I said on the Monday show, this season we've seen examples of when Newcastle have played quite well in the first half and come out in the second half and been pretty poor. But they came out and look to at a second, and they got it through Alexander Isak. And John, just explain how you felt when that ball hit the back of the net.
When that went in, I knew it was our cup. I knew it was our cup. It didn't matter if they went down and scored one. They did. It didn't matter. I knew when that ball left Isak's foot, I thought, you beauty, you beauty. This is ours now. This is ours now. I can get the cigar out and I can start enjoying the rest of the game. The nails needn't be bitten anymore. And by the way, we were very unlucky. Isak did a couple of minutes before that. That one was ruled out because Bruno was supposed to be in the high line of the keeper. I'm not certain he was, I'm not certain that he was in the high line. Yes, he was standing, but I don't think that the keeper got out of jail. The keeper got out of jail there. That could easily have stood, because he wasn't offside. It was Bruno. But hey, and I tell you what, this wasn't Isak at his most dynamic over the 90 minutes. I didn't think over the 90 minutes that he ran them ragged. But you know what? That's what good strikers do, Andrew. They're quiet. They just go about sniffing and looking and then they strike like a cobra. That's what good strikers do. They don't blaze around for 90 minutes in every game, because you can't. They don't do what Nunes has done in the past for Liverpool, which is run about like a fly, here, there, and everywhere, and then miss 3 setters. Good strikers lurk. And then they strike like a cop. And by the way, you talk about sweetness. The way he swept that ball in, I mean, that is the definition of quality fit. That's 23 goals for the season in all competitions, 25 last season. I mean, this guy can beat all the record books, and hopefully with us, and stay with us and do that, because it was, I mean, it was wonderful. He's got 10 more games, by the way. He's got 23 goals this season, 25 last season, and he's got 10 more games to add to those 23, and to get the one he needs for back-to-back 20 Premier League goals in successive seasons, which no Newcastle player's done. I mean, Isak is just absolute quality. But I tell you what, I defy you to go through any member of that Newcastle United starting 11 and have a criticism for them, because I look back. I said before the game, and I wasn't being clever. I just got lucky and said the right thing. But I said before the game, we win and lost in midfield because Graham Souness had told us that Liverpool's strength was not Mo Salah's goals, it was really the platform they had in midfield with McAllister and the other two, and that's what the success was built upon. I tell you what, we bullied them. We had three top midfielders. We said so, all of us said so before the game. When you look at Tonali and you look at Bruno and you look at Joe Linton, you realise what quality we have in there. And we outbullied them, we outran them. When have they been bullied like that in midfield, Liverpool? They just don't get bullied. Big Joe, I mean, goodness gracious me. I mean, he could beat Usyk for the world heavyweight title. Apart from, and he could play basketball and be a top point scorer, and he can do this for us. He can do everything. He is become a colossus. Whatever happened to that man that played centre forward? I'm sure it's a different guy to the guy that we've got now. But it wasn't just those three, was it? Byrne was sensational. By the way, I thought Joe Linton could easily have got man of the match, but Byrne thoroughly deserved it as well. It could have been anybody. And by the way, we were supposed to be weak on our left-hand side because we had Livramento on his wrong side and we had Harvey Barnes, and it was the strip of turf where Mo Salah roams. So we were supposed to be going to get chucked up there. Oh, not a hell's chance. I mean, I thought, did anybody tell Livramento he was playing on his wrong side? Because I don't think he realised that whatsoever. He was a Rolls Royce. He was an absolute Rolls Royce. We never saw Mo Salah. And you know why? Because he was in Livermento's back pocket. You just didn't see him. I mean, he was a flop. And don't give me the fact. What irritates me often, Andrew, is not on Tyneside, but elsewhere in the country. If we lose, we're hopeless. If we win, it's because the other team was poor. I'm sick of hearing that from neutrals and press men and radio men that are in the Midlands or the South. That some people try to tell us Liverpool were hopeless. You know why Liverpool were hopeless? Because we made them hopeless. That's why. Because we bullied them out of it in midfield. Because Livramento said to himself and to Salah, listen, pal, you have got to start worrying about me. I'm not going to worry about you. I'm going to go past you on the front foot and attack. You've got to chase back with me. And if you don't chase back, I'm away, by the way. And give him something to worry about instead of you worrying about him. And we did that magnificently. And we did the whole thing all over the park. We were absolutely terrific. And that's what gives you so much pride because we not only got a trophy, but we absolutely slaughtered them. And 2-1 is never a reflection of the game. 3-0, and by the way, we had some chances at 2-0 to make it 3-0. 3-0 would have been much more like it. And we have just beaten Liverpool, Arsenal, Nottingham Forest, and Chelsea to win this cup. I can't emphasise that enough because that's the top four in the Premier League. And if they say, Andrew, that if you're going to win a trophy, you've got to beat the best, we've just beaten all four of the best.
Yeah, certainly so. And so much to take away from what you've just said there. Isaac, ice cool, and you are right. He wasn't at the best of himself, but the best strikers just turn up when you need them. And you're correct as well. You could pick several players to be contenders for man of the match. And you mentioned Barnes and Livramento. And it was just amazing the difference from that West Ham game to what we saw on Sunday. They went from looking like strangers against West Ham to looking like they've played all season together. And of course, the second goal comes from those two working together and Livramento getting the ball into the box. And the amount of people who criticised him against West Ham and said, he's getting in these brilliant positions, but he's not whipping the ball in. And then Sunday, his crosses finally finding its way to Isaac, who puts the ball in the back of the net. Just so many brilliant performances. And we haven't even mentioned Nick Pope, John, because we both said Martin Dubravka in net, please. Goes with Nick Pope, and he had one save to make in the second half, and it was an absolute belter, really strong hand. I mean, what can we say about Nick Pope? He he looked comfortable. He looked comfortable. He didn't have too much to do because of the way Newcastle dominated. But when he did have to come off his line, there was a diving header as well that he had to clear in the first half. But it was the right decision, wasn't it? And we all trust Eddie Howe.
Of course we do. It's always the right decision when you win, Andrew. You don't make many bad decisions when you win. And by the way, you mentioned Nick Pope, and it's a very, very good point. We haven't even mentioned Nick Pope. I tell you somebody else who haven't even mentioned, because we can mention everybody, and that's Kieran Trippier. This guy's 34. He was supposed to be past his sell-by date. He'd gone from being skipper to reserve at Newcastle. He'd gone from being the best signing of the new era that saved us from relegation when he first come. He wasn't supposed to start in this game whatsoever, and wouldn't have started if Lewis Hall hadn't been injured and Livramento moved across. He he turned the clock back. He decided he was going to be the Kieran Trippier vote. He said, I've got one last hurrah. I'm not suggesting anything's going to happen now, but I mean, on a stage as big as this with a cup available, this is my last hurrah. You know what? I'm a good player. You know what? I've won the Spanish league title. You know what? I've played for England. You know what? I'm going to do this because I owe it to myself as well as to the fans, etc. He played terrific. I tell you, it's some stage in the game, Andrew, and you probably saw this as well as me. He clutched the back of his thigh, and I thought, because he does. He's 34 now, for goodness sake. He does suffer from these things. In any other game, like in the league, in an ordinary, he would have gone off. You couldn't have dragged him off if you'd sent a tank on and tied him down and pulled him off the ground. He wasn't going to miss the rest of the game. He played on, and he did do something in his thigh, but he played on, and he got through on adrenaline, and his leadership qualities came out in that. And I thought he was terrific as well, and an unsung hero because he wasn't even supposed to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when he clutched his leg and then he comes back on with some spray or some cream, and then you see him stretching it out a couple of minutes later, my heart sunk because he'd been so good in that first half. His way he was playing, but also his leadership and his experience was shining through. And you did wonder. I know Emil Kraft eventually came on and I'm putting a good shift for a brief cameo, but he's not Kieran Trippier, who
No,
just
no, no,
seems
not at all.
ready made for finals. He was the only one a couple of years ago who had experience in a major final, and it showed. But on Sunday, it felt like we were more we had grown as a squad in terms of maturity, but you still needed someone who had experienced that, and there was Kieran Trippier leading the troops. I mean, you had so many leaders across the pitch; it was absolutely fantastic. In terms of your emotion, John, when first off there's 8 minutes go up for added time. I don't know about you. Like, obviously, you don't want 8 minutes. You want
No,
as least as possible. But I wasn't sitting there going, "Oh God, 8 minutes," because
no,
they'd done so well through the entirety of the game. They'd controlled it. They'd managed it. They were on top of the game. Liverpool had one real chance, which, as we spoke about, Pope tipped over. So I wasn't worried about the 8 minutes. And then they get a goal, which came really from Newcastle's own making. The only time there was a real lapse of concentration, Bruno gives the ball away, Cher dives in, and they end up scoring. Obviously, goes to VAR, but he's onside. Good that goes in because I would have loved the clean sheet. But again, I wasn't concerned that they were going to go and get a second goal, despite
no.
the fact there was 4 or 5. It ended up being 6 minutes left. And it's a compliment to Newcastle United that they put me in that position where, although they've conceded a goal against the best side in the country, I wasn't sitting there worried. I was thinking they're just going to see this out and we're going to be celebrating in 6 minutes' time.
Yeah, I mean, I felt exactly the same way. And you're not going to say you're comfortable because you realize a fluke can happen, but you're not panicking. You're not panicking. And I thought a couple of things. I thought, first, God can't be that cruel again. And I thought, secondly, Lady Luck, I haven't seen her today turn her back on us. She hasn't done us any favors. We didn't need Luck, but she hasn't turned her back on us. It's not going to go. That would have been, can you imagine if anything had happened then, taking it extra time and we'd lost? That would have been the cruelest way you could lose at Wembley ever because we had absolutely dominated the whole lot. I mean, after the game, I had to get the league table out to make certain that we were only sixth and that Liverpool were top, because they didn't get a kick against us. And I just thought, well, terrific. By the way, several things we've said, because things keep whirring around in your head, because we're still coming back down to earth. I mean, 2 years, what a change. Isaac, 25 goals last season, 23 goals this season. He only went on as a sub 2 years ago at Wembley. I mean, can you imagine Isaac as voluntarily a sub, not coming back from injury, voluntarily a sub, kept out of the side at Newcastle United these days? Dear, oh dear, oh dear, has the landscape changed just a tad in that time? And it has hugely. I mean, yes, I feel desperately sorry for Hall and for Gordon and for Botman, because whatever we say, and there was Botman and Gordon on the pitch, as rightly should, after the game, celebrating with the boys. They're young, their time will come, and they will get other days like that with Newcastle United. Of course, it was harsh on them, but um, you know, it was just a wonderful day for us. And by the way, I've got to come to Eddie Howe. I mean, what a masterclass was the Arsenal, where he moved the back round, changed the system, got a front press with even the centre halves coming up, and then the way hand did work for a fortnight on free kicks, because they knew that in corner kicks, because they knew that Liverpool could be vulnerable there. They were clever. They put Livramento on the front foot, not the back foot. 99 managers out of 100 and 99 left backs, Tinos, would have been terrified of playing against Salah, and would have been so apprehensive they would have tied their ankles to the goalpost, their own goalpost, and never ventured away from that to try to play. We attacked them. And Salah didn't have the appetite, by the way, didn't have the appetite to put a shift in going backwards. He
Yeah,
wasn't prepared to do that. And by the way, they've much vaunted front three. What did you see of them, Andrew? They got tucked up well and truly.
yeah, it was a
By
brilliant
they got
defensive
tucked up,
performance.
they got tucked up by a back four, Andrew, that were two emergency fullbacks. Trippier wasn't supposed to start, and Livermento's a right back playing at left back. And I mean, it's just all so wonderful and so crazy, and I'm not going to say unexpected, because I felt that we reflected the feeling on Tyneside that every day we got closer to Wembley, we were that much more confident. But we always realised, all of us Geordies realised that our destiny has been so consistently bleak that what's going to happen on the day, something's going to happen to upset the apple cart. And it was the exact opposite. It was wonderful, wonderful, and so deserved. And that, you know what, that is above all my great consolation, is it was so deserved. I would have took anything. I would have took 1-0 with an own goal in 89 minutes and been outplayed, and a big stormtroopers at the back, and wasn't it wonderful? We kicked everything over the Wembley arch just to get the result. But we didn't play like that. We played the way Newcastle are at their best, which is a front foot team. And by the way, you talk about the speech we did and the fun we had last week, and we did have fun, and it was wonderful. But they did all that. They wanted it like that. They they got it. They got what it meant to the Geordie public. 2 years ago, they were overawed by what it meant to the Geordie public. Here, they got it. The sleeves are rolled up, not just to the armpits, but over the top of the shoulder. I mean, we talk about the hearts like a frying pan. Everybody had that. I mean, not just Big Dan Byrne, who has that by second nature. And what a week for him, by the way. I mean, dear, oh dear, oh dear. He gets picked. I mean, this guy used to, not so long ago, push trolleys round Asda and play for fun for Blythe Town and Blythe Spartans. And here he is, scoring the opening goal at Wembley, getting voted man of the match, and then taking off from Wembley to join up with England. And he's 34 in May. I mean, you know, Hollywood, forget the Rocky films. They were fiction. They were fantasy. This is reality. This is for real. He's a real Rocky. The other Rocky didn't exist.
Yeah, it's superb for Dan Burn. What a week, and hopefully he makes his debut for England as well. But yeah, I mean, what a way to set out the game. Perfectly managed. And there's a Liverpool fan has clipped up the last kind of 4 or 5 minutes of the game, and it's all the clips in which Newcastle United out muscle Liverpool after Liverpool have got that goal, and it just kind of summed up, I think, the desire and want and commitment of the Newcastle United players, and so important as well, because although I was confident Newcastle United weren't going to concede a second, on the pitch, it's a totally different kind of mindset. It would be very easy to kind of start fearing and start to lose focus and panic, but they didn't. And that clip that I'm talking about shows them just using their strength and just showing that commitment and taking the ball to the corner and just being really clever in terms of that game management. It was really, really well executed the way they saw the game out. And just on Mo Salah, John, he only had 23 touches in that game, which shows you just how well Tino Livramento did. Absolutely brilliant. Tell me then, when that whistle goes, the ball is knocked up towards Newcastle United's box, and then the referee blows his whistle. The players stream onto the pitch. How are you feeling, John?
I had to actually fight as hard in those last few minutes as Newcastle United had done for an hour and a half. But I was fighting to hold back the tears because you don't know what you're going to feel like. But you've waited so long. I mean, I'd waited for 70 years and I'd been there for all those 70 years because I'd sat in front of the telly, the black and white telly, when I was a little lad watching Newcastle win the last domestic trophy in 55. I didn't know if I'd be alive 70 years later. So the emotion that I felt at that time was unexpected. I didn't know how I'd feel until it happened. You don't know. You know how much you know how you feel when you lose, because I've gone to Wembley and lost 5 times. So you knew how you felt then. But I fought the tears, and then I thought, you don't fight it, It's a badge of honor. Be proud. You don't have to be embarrassed. I mean, the time to be embarrassed is when you've watched the cup final and been humiliated, and the rest of the country's lining up to take the mick out of Geordies, the greatest supporters of failure in football. We're that no longer. We've now won a cup we've never won before, and it's always the first one is the most difficult. It was like that for Manchester City. It was like that for Wenger. It was like that for Ferguson. And then the floodgates, if you're well run, the floodgates are open. If your chances that just hope, like Middlesbrough win the League Cup, and it's still the only trophy they've ever won in now over 100-year history, because there wasn't planning and plotting, and they had a wonderful chairman in Steve Gibson, but there wasn't the depth of planning and plotting, and it's become a one-off, a beacon, like when Wigan won the FA Cup against Man City. But if a big club is starting to go places, the first one isn't a one-off. That's a door opening. Think about it. From the takeover, we've got in the top four and had cup final, which we lost, and then had Champions League and beat Paris Saint Germain. And now we went to another cup final and we've won this one. And that guarantees Europe next season, even if it is only at this stage, a Conference League playoffs, which we'd win the playoffs, by the way. And I think we could easily win the trophy if we're going to that, though I want to be in the Champions League. But we could win the Conference League, and that could be our next trophy if we're going there, because that competition is most winnable. The Champions League, you don't think you're going to win it, but you think you're going to have a wonderful time in it. And that's where all the dough comes from to build to your next level, your next brick in the wall. But, I mean, this is the start of something. And as long as we don't expect it and the players and the management and the owners don't expect it just to roll out automatically, and certainly Eddie Howe won't, and certainly the owners won't, let's make the owners thirsty.
Yeah, indeed. And I think it's interesting because I think big clubs have that expectation to be in a final. I think that's fine. But also, you are right. You don't want to have that expectation as a player and a fan that it's going to be easy going, because it's never easy. But I think to have the expectation that this is where we aim for every season and we expect to get there is a really good thing, because that's going to be the motivation that'll push you on. When you saw them lift the cup, John, up on the balcony, how were you feeling?
I was feeling panicked because all I wanted to do was just watch it for the rest of my life, and I realised I had a piece to write for the Chronicle with a deadline. So I was absolutely torn. I wanted to be in the paper because I wanted to say something about my dream coming true after so long. But at the other hand, I didn't want to write a word. I didn't want to take my eye off this because I knew I'd never seen it for so long. And I just wanted to drink it in, and I wanted to you looked. I mean, I saw people like Dan Burn, who's been a fan since he was a kid. I saw people like Bruno. Have you? I mean, Bruno was more emotional than any Geordie. He's an adopted Geordie. He's taken us aboard. He is, and I tell you what, Eddie Howe, bless him, and I mean this as a compliment, is looked upon by some people as boring because his idea of a good night in is a cup of cocoa and switching Newcastle's latest match on the telly and sitting and dissecting it, and that's his idea of a good night out. And I mean, he got emotional. He got emotional for his mum. He was drenched because Joe Linton had, I think, emptied a crate of booze over his head. But it was wonderful to see him so happy and so emotional because he's done so much for us all. You know what? He needs this club and we need him. He needs this club because we're the first huge club with terrific respect to Bournemouth that he's had, and he's thrown his whole life and passion into it. His first day he come up here, he got the ground at 6:30 in the morning and left at 11 o'clock at night. He brought his family up here immediately. He bought into the Newcastle United thing. He got the club and he got the fans, and that has spread through to the players. And you look at Joe Linton. Does he deserve it? I mean, he almost become a comic figure when he was first at Newcastle in the old days as a centre forward. Does he deserve what he's got? By Jove, he does. And Bruno was like a little Geordie lad cavorting around. I mean, he couldn't stop crying. Um, and Big Dan's a supporter. Jacob Murphy's been a supporter. Um, every part just fit in perfectly. And Liverpool, it's just as well. I got a 12-point lead because about 2 months ago they were going to win 4 cups. But they didn't win. They got knocked out the FA Cup. They got knocked out the Champions League. We've just took them up in bed in their League Cup. So, albeit the one they've got left's the biggest one, and good luck to them. I hope they get it because I'm sick of seeing Manchester City winning. But all of a sudden, Arne Slot, who's been put forward as the greatest manager since the phrase was invented, all of a sudden looks distinctly human. And I tell you what, he come out second in a two-horse race at Wembley because Eddie Howe took them up in big time. Um, it was it was sensational, and I've watched the videos since. I've watched the clips of the goals since. I've watched the clips of all the fans at Wembley. I've watched all the clips of all the fans coming out to the central station at Newcastle. I can't get enough of it. And by the way, it's just starting. I don't know if we'll ever come down to earth. And you know what? I don't really want to come down to earth. I quite like the rarefied air floating across the time. I think the Newcastle players over the next fortnight, as they all come back home after international duty and after Dubai, they won't have to cross the Tyne Bridge. They can just walk across the Tyne because they can walk on water after that. And I always said, you know, there'll be statues, people will be put on pedestals, and now they will. And you know what? Interesting though, Andrew. You know what? You look at what Eddie Howe's done for Newcastle, and he might go on to do a lot more yet. Pray God that he does. Would he be due a statue when we think that Bobby Robson's got one and he won now?
Yeah, well, that was what I was going to come on to, because Eddie Howe deserves huge praise for what he did on Sunday, but what he's done, as you've alluded to, since he's come here to Newcastle from relegation fodder to winners of the League Cup and a team battling for Europe year in, year out. He got the tactical plan spot on against Liverpool. The team talk would have been spot on because you could see that in the passion and the commitment of the players going up against their opposition. They just wanted it more. And that does lead you on to the question about statues and what have you. And I've made my point clear on the Monday show that I don't think Eddie Howe wants a statue. I don't think he deserves a statue at this point in time. I think you give him a few more years to win things on a regular basis, and you also don't build a statue of a manager until they've left the club. Because I think it's always
You've just hit the
dangerous.
nail on the head, Andrew. You do not do anything in terms of statues and things like that until the fat lady sung and it's all over, because then you know what their record is. You give him a statue and he perhaps doesn't win any of the trophy. Having said that, Bobby Robson, who I adore personally, and the way he played for Newcastle, had a statue without winning out. You could say Kevin Keegan finished higher up the league than Bobby and could have had a statue, but you don't do anything. But you put the fact that there might need to be one for Eddie eventually. But if Isaac stays here and continues scoring goals like this, he might stand up next to Jackie Milburn and Alan Shearer on a statue. You do not go down that road knee jerk. You don't win one cup and say, right, we'll have everybody's got a statue now. We'll have all statues and knock down the ones that we previously had, etc., etc. You do it in due course. You do it at the end of the day when the dust is settled, and you look. By the way, there's not a statue to Joe Harvey, and he's the only fella that stands above Eddie Howe in what he's won for Newcastle United. So let's not get too carried away yet. But the possibilities are there.
Yeah, well, I'm sure people, if they're playing Newcastle United bingo listening to this episode, have been wondering when I would mention Joe Harvey, and we're 42 minutes into the episode. But there we go, because we don't want to spend too long on this, but the conversations have been about Kevin Keegan, Sir Bobby, and how Eddie Howe rises above them in the list. He does, but he's only on the level of Joe Harvey. And to some, he might even just be a little bit underneath, because Joe's got that longevity and he built three great teams. Do you? I mean, just yeah,
he is
just
beneath
quickly,
Joe,
John.
just to finish off, because Joe won a European trophy, not a domestic trophy, the only one we've ever had. He won the Anglo-Italian, don't knock it, in Florence in front of 42,000 Italians and without Supermac, and won the title. Also, if you talk about Joe himself, he skipped Newcastle to 2 FA Cup victories there. But we don't want to go on about the past. I think he is now well, but if you say that the only thing that matters with a manager is winning trophies, because that's how you judge a manager, then in one giant step, Eddie Howe has just gone beyond Kevin Keegan and Bobby Robson, who are rightfully loved by St James's Park because they give us the entertainers and the top 3 side in Bobby's case, and they were wonderful. And I will never downgrade them because they were fabulous. But in terms of a trophy, he's gone there. His next target is Joe Harvey, and he's got to look. He's got to look at that. Let us judge it all at the end of the day. Let's enjoy what we've got now. Let's dream about what we might get very shortly. And, life's turned out wonderful.
It has indeed. Just a quick reminder, ladies and gents, that this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. Hit the link in your podcast description box to get an exclusive discount on your plan. I used this when I was down in the capital over the weekend, and it made me feel a lot more secure because I could connect to Wi-Fi, whether it be in the cafes, try and upload the content on the train, or in my hotel room as well, where I was working till 3 a.m., bringing you the very best content around. So I hope you enjoyed it. But NordVPN did offer me that security. So do make sure you sign up, protect yourself, and support the podcast. And also, just quickly, ladies and gents, we have released, or we are building a special Newcastle United Carabao Cup winners souvenir pullout, which will be available later this week. You can pre-order yours now. I will pop the link in the podcast description box. More than 2,000 orders have already been placed for this. This is going to be something you're going to want to read and keep forever. It's majority of John's work, I'll be honest with you, which is always good. And John has really put his heart and soul into this. I'm in there, Aaron, Lee, Kieran, and loads of pictures of the weekend as well. So make sure you hit the link and buy that, because this is going to be a collectible edition. And also, if you want the back pages from the Chronicle, or the front pages rather, from the Chronicle, which came out on Monday, there's also a link for that, which I'll put into the podcast description box, because I couldn't find one for love nor money in the city centre. Thankfully, when me and John live a little bit out in the sticks, I managed to get my hands on both a copy of the Journal and Chronicle. But for those in the city centre, or indeed anywhere in the country or the world, because you can order abroad, hit that link if you want a copy of the front page. John, I've got a couple of questions for you, because people have wanted to get in touch. First off, praising your team talk that we put out. I know you were inundated with calls and messages of kind of thanks and people relating to what you were saying, but also we've had a few comments sent in, so I'll go through them. We've got Tommy asking, at what moment in the match did it dawn on John that we might actually win this?
I've got to say, Dan Burns header. But everything grew with us playing well. But I've seen us play well earlier this season, and then it fizzles out. We haven't scored, and then it fizzles out, and then it's back to the walls, and then we lose a home game or whatever. When Dan Burn put in a header from that distance, it just ripped the net off the back of the goal. I mean, I was just buzzing, and I buzzed all the way through half time. At that stage, I thought, you know what? This is going to be our day. We're a different class to Liverpool. I had sat through 74 when Kevin Keegan and the rest of the Reds absolutely embarrassed us. And this felt so differently. When that ball hit the back of the net, I thought, we're going to go on from this. And then when Isaac scored, it was time to get the cigars and the champagne out, because you knew then you'd won it. You know why? Not because you thought the team might get the cigars and the champagne out, because then they would have got tucked up. But you knew they wouldn't. You knew they wouldn't. You saw how much they cared. You saw how much it meant to them. And you thought, you know what? We're in good hands here. We're in good hands here. This is going to happen.
Yeah, indeed. For me, it really was just before kickoff. I thought the battle of the terraces, Newcastle won that, and then there was a few moments aside from the goals, which you just thought, "Wow, okay, we've got this." There was a really, it's a nothing moment really, but Dan Burn up against Mo Salah early in the first half, and he doesn't panic, even though Mo Salah's got a couple of yards on him, and he just gets to him and just shepherds him. And Mo Salah ends up letting the ball go out for a goal kick. And I just thought, you know what, that cool head right there in this environment is so important. And you could just tell that Dan Burn was focused and Mo Salah didn't look happy. I thought, look, he's their best player and he's not got the better of Dan Burn there. Dan Burn has done everything that he's needed to do in a calm and focused manner. That for me was a little bit something of optimism and positivity. There was Joe Linton getting in on Jota with a brilliant clearance, and he had to make up, I don't know, 5-10 yards. That was another moment. Nick Pope save. And there was a moment as well when Tonali had a chance in the first half, and the ball was blocked, and Liverpool suddenly broke. And instead of just standing there with his hands on his hips looking round, he was away and he got back, and he had a lot of distance to make up, but he got back and he stopped it. I thought, right there, that is the difference. The commitment and the desire in that moment. Tonali won the ball. This is going to be ours. And then, of course, the goals, as you mentioned, John. We all knew. But yeah, so many moments people will shout out about. The next question from Will. What did you make of Eddie saying that we kept our powder dry in the league game? Was Isaac maybe fitter than led to believe, or was it simply a different tactical look?
That was a very interesting point, and I thought it was quite revealing because Eddie doesn't normally pull the curtain back and give you a little look at what's going on indoors. We were outplayed down there. We didn't do well whatsoever. I think he learned a lot of messages. You've got to bear in mind that we didn't have Isaac down there, who's got 23 goals this season, and we also didn't have Joe Linton, who's been a bear trap of a man for Newcastle United. Neither of those played down there. I think he learned a lot by the way Liverpool played. I think he saw that they could be vulnerable on set pieces, the way they mark up, they try to do things. And he used the expression, we kept our powder dry. To a certain extent, I don't think he went down there with a deliberate intention of sacrificing 3 points because of the Champions League. But instead of wallowing in self pity or in fear about the way they played and thought, goodness gracious, this is team stands between us and getting something for the first time in 70 years. He used that experience and he used the fact that he knew he had Joe Linton coming back, who got a couple of games in before Wembley to get the rust away from his legs and become the absolute beast he can be. And he had Isaac back, who, as I said in the game, can be quiet, and then all of a sudden he turns the whole thing on his head. What all good strikers do. Supermac used to do it all the time. Shearer would do it all the time. Jackie Milburn would do it, and he did it. And he's just looking at the finished article completely. But tactically, he sat down after that game and looked at it and said, "No team's perfect. So what is Liverpool's? Where are they vulnerable? What are they not quite so good at?" And you know what? There's only one way to play Liverpool, and that's without fear. That is, go at them. As Joe Harvey used to famously say, don't worry about the opposition, let them worry about us. And I felt that's the way we played the final.
Yeah, indeed. We've got Mort saying, "Did John cry?" And he's very excited to listen to this episode when it goes out. I mean, you've said you fought back the tears and then you just let yourself go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't win. I was the only Geordie that lost on the day. I didn't win the fight against the Tears, but I didn't care. I cared to start with because it was a matter of, are you a man or a mouse? And then I decided I was a mouse, but a very proud one. Um, of course I did. Of course I did. Because, I'm not seven thinking I'm story eyed and this is going to happen all the time. I'm an OAP and it hasn't happened for an eternity and you want that to happen quick. And there it was happening before my eyes and it was just too wonderful. And I mean, quite frankly, if I think about it now or watch a game now, I could cry all over again. But why not? We've earned the right to do that. Us more than anybody has earned the right to do that. So of course I did.
Yeah, you, me, and I tell you what, thousands upon thousands of Newcastle United
Of
fans.
course.
Everyone I've spoken to said that they shed a tear. I went straight into the stands at full time to speak to people, and the tears there were, it's yeah, you're right. No need to be ashamed. We've earned the right to get this emotional, and thank you to Eddie Howe for making us cry. We've got Kyle saying, "I feel John's team talk helped us get over the line." We've got Jarrow Mag saying, "Not so much a question, but I'm absolutely buzzing for John. His enthusiasm, dedication, and love for the club is second to none. I could listen to him poetically speak about this wonderful club for hours. So glad he cancelled dying. Tell him to keep it cancelled till the next trophy." Well, maybe a
I've,
little bit
cer-
after the next trophy and after
I've
and after.
I've certainly done that. I've certainly done that. I'm so optimistic about what the future holds for Newcastle United. I've actually started organising my 100th birthday party.
Yeah, spot on. And by that time, John, we've won nearly everything that is
Oh,
possible to win.
well, if I do pop my clogs at 100, I'll probably be getting close to being bored by us winning so easily so many trophies. So it'll be okay then.
And the final question, John, is from Dave, and he says, "How did John celebrate? A nice meal, a bottle of champagne, or a pint of brown ale?"
A nice meal and two bottles of chilled white wine. Not one, two. And I'm normally in insomnia, but I slept like a baby after watching Newcastle win a couple of bottles of white wine. I slept like a baby. Got up in the morning, pinched myself to make certain I hadn't dreamt it. I hadn't, and floated on air ever since. I don't feel at all my age. I feel a Ben.
Yeah, well, do you know what? I didn't get to bed till 3:30 on Sunday. I wish it was because I was out celebrating, but it was because I was editing. But as soon as I hit the pillow and I had to be up at 6, to get ready for my train, but it was the best night's sleep I've had in so long, and it was only about 2 or 2.5 hours. But I think I was so that emotionally drained that I was just flat out. But yeah, fantastic weekend. Just to finish off, then, John. We know your team talk went down an absolute treat. So I want you to tell us your message to the players and to Eddie Howe after ending Newcastle United's long wait for a major trophy.
I'd just like to say, boys, thank you so much for making an old man happy. It was, I can't think of a better day I've had with Newcastle United or anything in my life. Uh, I honestly, in my deepest despair during the Mike Ashley years and everything else, felt that these days might never come again, that I had to cling on to War Jackie and to Bobby Moncur and all things like that. I'd seen wonderful players come and go from Newcastle, like Alan Shearer and Gaza and Peter Beardsley. I've seen wonderful managers like Kevin Keegan and Bobby Robson, and I'd still won out. I was still potless, and it was beginning to seem like it's never ending. Everything we desired, everything we asked you to give us on behalf of a nation which has lived absolutely relentlessly supporting a club who just didn't win things. Everything we asked of you, you produced. And you not only produced it, but you produced it in shoals. We will be eternally grateful for that. We love you all to death. We promised you a place one on top of Gray's Monument. It'll be hard to get about 20 of you up there, but we'll do our very best. You know what I say now? What I always say, shy Ben's getting out. You've enjoyed it. You know what we've done for us. We are thrilled to bits. Now let us have some more. The next 70 years, we don't want to be like the last 70 years. We don't believe for one moment that there will be. But go out and do yourself proud in the immediate future. And in doing that, you'll make us proud. Wait till you come back with a cup and hear what the Geordies think of you when you parade it at St James's Park. Wait till you run out with the black and white shirt back on in our first match after Wembley when we're at home to Brentford. Wait and see what happens between now and the end of the season. See how much love there is. You might have felt you would be loved if you won something. You had no idea what it'll be like from now in. God bless. Thanks a lot for it. Certainly appreciate it.
There we go. Couldn't have said it better myself. And yes, the date for the parade has been announced, and it will be the 29th of March. Full details to follow. So make sure you get that in your diary. It's going to be one heck of a day, celebrating the first bit of major silverware since 1969, the first bit of domestic silverware in 70 years. It still doesn't feel real saying that. But for myself and John, it is real. It has happened. I hope you've enjoyed this show. I've certainly enjoyed talking to John about the final and his emotions. Please hit thumbs up. Please hit subscribe. Please click the several links in the podcast description box, because by doing so, you will support the podcast, but also, at least on two of them links, get a bit of history in your hands, because I know, John, I've got it, and I can't wait to be showing my kids that when they're old enough to say, this is what Newcastle United did, and this is why I cried at Wembley, because of Eddie Howe and these players. So make sure you do get your hands on that. It'll be well worth it. For myself and John, we'll see you guys next week.